Hi guys, it's me. I'm back again with another video, and today I'm going to be reading to you chapter 1, or at least some of chapter 1, from my new book, Behind the Family Name. Agatha Christie style murder mystery, so it's set in 1920s England, so Edwardian England, and yeah, I'm not going to give too much away because it is a murder mystery, but let's get started. So, chapter 1. Teeling, manservant to the Shergroves for many a year, entered Master Shergrove's room. On doing so, he was greeted by the sight of the boy stretched across his bed. In one hand a letter. The other, however, was engaged in a private act that no servant should have had the misfortune of seeing. Especially Teeling fell on a Sunday. Luckily, it was Saturday, so Teeling gave no notice as the boy's hand withdrew hastily at the intrusion. "Forgive my interrupting, sir, but your mother requests your presence at breakfast." With that, Teeling withdrew as quickly as he had entered, leaving the young master notably redder in the face. The young master, who, like his father, was known to most as Edward, or to his friends Eddie, and to Teeling simply Master, rose at once. He took a moment to pause at his desk to straighten his jacket, using the opportunity to mutter a curse at Teeling's impertinence. He tugged at a cuff and ran a hand through his hair, all while glancing towards the door as if expecting further intrusions. He became aware of the heat in his cheeks, and where his eyes met Teeling's for half a second. He was also conscious of how he had never been able to hide anything from the man, and how he found Teeling's silence on such matters worse than any scolding. But when no further interruption came, Edward drew one slow breath, and then another, until the flush cooled. Only then did he slide the letter into the drawer and letting his hand rest on the brass knob a moment longer. It was exactly how much had Teeling seen? The question sat cold in his stomach. Not the act itself, that in itself was mortifying, but the letter, if even a glance had fallen upon those lines. Edward swallowed. Morning light filtered through the curtains, catching the strain in his expression as he looked up, turning toward the window, where the faint scent of dust and polished wood that lingered amid the orderly stacks of books across the desk, the only sign of discipline against the backdrop of adolescent uncertainty. The question continued to roll through his mind until a faint clatter from the kitchens below suggested that breakfast preparations were underway. It was a clatter loud enough in the otherwise quiet household to snap Edward to the present. Pulling himself from his thoughts, he dressed fully for the day, habitually adjusting his cravat. As he tucked in his shirt, his eyes wandered over the familiar trappings of his room. The portrait of his late father, his small brass clock ticking insistently on the desk next to a half-finished cup of cold tea, and abandoned during the previous night's attempt to complete the final paragraph of an essay that stubbornly refused to create itself. The essay, which was Dr. Claiborne's latest assignment, demanded he argue whether an act could ever be justified if it preserved the greater good. And last night the words had tangled themselves into knots, and this morning they felt even more impossible. Once again, he was presentable enough that no trace of his earlier indulgence remained. He descended the stairs, finding Teeling stood beside the vase, turning it a fraction clockwise and then counterclockwise, as though the porcelain itself required his undivided attention. Edward's jaw tightened. He had expected nothing less now. He knew Teeling had not come to inspect the vase, but to make certain the young master did not return to whatever indiscretion he had so recently abandoned. Edward's voice came out saying, "Thank you, Teeling." The servant's fingers stilled on the vase. "You may inform my mother I shall attend to her breakfast." "Very good, sir." Teeling inclined his head in the boy's direction as he stepped back. "I think perhaps the vase did better without my interference." He offered one more low bow and was gone. Edward said nothing until his confident Ealing was out of earshot, and only then did he pause to adjust the vase back to its original position, muttering a soft protest at the early hour and the way the household still conspired to treat him like a child. Once thoroughly satisfied, he made his way towards the dining room and the waiting day. There we go, that is the opening scene to Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is divided into 3 scenes of my new book, Behind the Family Name. There'll be links in the description below to Amazon if you'd like to buy a copy for yourself. And I will endeavour to read more of the first chapter in a later video. You can see the second scene, where we introduce Lady Shergrove, Edward's mother. But that's all from me for now. Until next time, bye.